Hi, everyone, and welcome. Tomorrow is August 1st, 2025, the day Europe's RED cybersecurity clauses officially switch from prepare to prove it. If you make or certify IoT radio devices, today is D-Day. So let's unpack what happens if you are not ready. I'm Ali, and I will guide this conversation. With me today are two experts who've been deep in the trenches of radio compliance. I have with me Gueltas Radenac, Business Line Director of SEALSQ, bringing the hardware and development perspective. And as well, I have Roland Atoui, founder of Red Alert Labs and a leading voice in cybersecurity compliance frameworks. Welcome to both of you on the call today.
Thank you, Ali.
Yeah, hello, Ali. Welcome.
Hello to both of you. So today is really just an honest conversation about what happens if you're not ready and how to close the gap fast. Because like as of midnight tonight, every in-scope product must now prove it meets the cybersecurity requirements and the enforcement has real teeth. And we want to learn more about this. So I want to turn to you, Roland, on this first question and ask you this. What will actually, with all the headline changes, what exactly will shift at midnight tonight? What is it that will change?
Well, very good question to start with, Ali, because from midnight, every in-scope product that you called it, this means actually hardware and software that communicates over the radio directly or indirectly to the internet, that legally meets the articles of the Radio Equipment Directive 3.3 DEF, all the one that actually working, gonna be in the context of our conversation today. So the big development is that the Commission finally published actually the harmonized standards, the famous EN 1831. And that one comes with 1-1-2-3, and that was happening, back in January.
Okay.
So if you follow basically those standards, you get what we call the presumption of conformity. But here's the catch.
Definitely, there's always a catch, right? Tell us what is that catch.
Sorry. So exactly the implementation decision I'm talking about includes what they call restriction notes. Okay, so these are specific clauses that can trigger mandatory involvement of the notified bodies. For example, a clause now explicitly bans default passwords. Okay, so if your legacy product have hard-coded credentials, you cannot just actually self-declare the compliance anymore. So that's basically catch.
So that the checklist actually now got somehow longer after the standards were somehow published.
And that's right. So it's I won't say longer, but there's really it's actually got like a more strict here, and then you have like there's also, you have to understand that there's no grace period there, right? The Commission has been clear. These requirements are now mandatory, so as of midnight. So no extensions and no phase in periods, which is basically the things that has been discussed at the time, that date, which was expected August 2024. And that has been moved to 2025. So now that's no more actually space for that. And all the manufacturers are indeed concerned.
Interesting. And so, Gueltas, maybe to you, like from a hardware perspective, how do you feel that this lands on manufacturers' desk, this type of information?
Yeah, Ali, you asked the right question. I mean, it's a reality check. In fact, many manufacturers thought they had more time, or that the requirements would be softer than expected, and the technical demands are quite specific. In fact, like unique device identities or better secure boot processes,
Okay.
or even encrypted communication. So there are not software patches you can push overnight as a device maker.
Okay, and interesting. So let's go into some kind of play out this kind of a scenario and see how this rolls out. So let's picture this: a smart speaker startup that wants to ship a last-minute batch today. They've done their EMC testing, they've got their radio certifications, but they haven't done the cybersecurity gap analysis, for example. So Gueltas, what happens at the border when they want to try to import this? What happens with them?
Yeah, that's a good challenge. I mean, this is where it could get very expensive and quite fast, because customs authorities or even market surveillance bodies, they can detain the shipment pending getting proper documentation. And then you have to look at the storage fees while you scramble to get all the stuff and the declaration of conformity out of that. And even worse, if you need a notified body assessment, that's potentially weeks or months of delays or headache.
So that's definitely quite a headache. And like Roland, we've heard about like actual fines being issued. Can you put some numbers on this? Because I've heard crazy numbers, and I don't know if you can confirm those.
So yeah, that's a good question. So I don't have the all the picture of all the numbers, because you have to understand that this is a directive. So it's basically could be transposed at the national level. So every member state could be like providing different types of fines. Okay, but I can give you an example. In Portugal, the ANACOM, what's called the National Telecom Regulator, has already imposed over 500,000 euros in penalties on at least 2 companies. So these fines were issued for missing the EU Declaration of Conformity that Gueltas mentioned, and failing to affix, actually, of course, their red marking, right? So with deficiencies that such as absent of the model, the batches, and serial numbers, etc. So this shows actually that's not just theoretical what we're talking about. Okay, so companies are being held accountable. It's adding up fast. This is strictly documentation related enforcement because missing paperwork and RED non-compliance is a question in there sometimes. Companies failing. Yeah, sorry. Companies failing to produce a valid declaration of conformity risk market bans sometimes, not just actually fines. So you have to really, get them understand that.
That is quite interesting. But again, what about the operational impact, Roland, as well? What's happening there?
Absolutely. I mean, the big impact is how your device interacts somehow with the network, right? So under Radio Equipment Directive, and starting this midnight, your product must not harm, for example, electronic communication networks or misuse the network resources. Okay, so that means that things like secure firmware updates, limiting unnecessary traffic, so preventing your device from being hijacked in DDoS attacks, like the denial of service attacks. If your product doesn't meet these requirements, market surveillance authorities could issue bans, require recalls, or block its sale in the EU. Right? So, it's really important to take into account that how much that could impact the operation aspects. Yeah.
And if I may,
please, go ahead, Gueltas.
Yeah, from a technical standpoint, I would say that retrofitting security into an existing hardware is often impossible. You can't add a hardware root of trust, for instance, through a software update. And some manufacturers are clearly looking at complete product redesign right now.
That's quite a challenge. So we're really talking about like real business consequences, like detained shipments, if I heard you well, substantial fines. We talked about €500,000, and that's, I believe, quite a lot, potentially more, right? So potential market bans as well, network disconnections. So it's not really just let's tick this compliance checkbox anymore, but it's really a huge issue. And I want to take us into like this next section of our conversation. And so for manufacturers who are really behind, today is D-Day or tonight is D-Night. Let's talk about a realistic catch-up plan if we can. What does a 3-month rescue roadmap, how would that actually look like to different manufacturers that today are struggling with getting into the market fit? I don't know if Roland, maybe you could kick us off with some information, and then I'll have Gueltas share some other. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I can start. I mean, definitely. I mean, there is way actually to tackle this, right? And from our experiences with customers, the first thing that we recommend is typically that they need to start by scoping and assess the gap of every product against the EN 18031 requirements. Okay, so they have to map the entire product line and then prioritize, of course, the high volume models so they can actually move forward. Yeah.
And how long would that actually take? Because everybody would be asking this type of question, right?
Well, I mean, of course, it always depends on the level of maturity, right? But there's something which is obvious. I mean, this first step doesn't take a lot of time. I mean, we could look into something around a week or two, but essentially creating the inventory of what you have versus what the standards require is going to take you just an effort that is around a week or so.
Understood. The Gueltas, if you want to continue with that process, what would that actually look like?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, you should focus on the hard controls, the technical implementation. You cannot fake, like what I said, secure boot or unique device credentials or TLS encryption, for instance. And ideally, your hardware root of trust. Those elements are clearly foundations. Everything else builds on. For instance, I mean, if you are securing a smart meter or a critical gateway or a camera, for instance, having those chips would help you to act as the anchor for everything else. And usually they are certified chips, which could be FIPS or common criteria. And that's giving you a foundation that would meet the regulatory expectation. But security does not stop at the silicon. I mean, I think that the EN 18031 also requires full lifecycle trust and certificate issuance. So the identity insurance, the code signing, the revocation, the traceability. That's where, for instance, public infrastructure is really a key solution. It's light, it's agile, it's optimized for constrained devices. So it will help the manufacturer to automate and to implement, for instance, secure over-the-air updates across the device fleet.
Okay. And so mainly, if I want to say and talk about, like from manufacturers who really didn't manage to design all of this elements from the start, because that's quite a challenge for them. What do they do, right? Like, what do they do today?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's a huge challenge. I mean, some basically can be retrofitted because they may incorporate the relevant computation, so you can implement a firmware update, for instance. But when you come to hardware level security, usually you require new components or even sometimes some board redesign. So this is clearly why starting early is so critical.
Right. I understand. Roland, I think you have something to share. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it's no, because actually very, very important what Gueltas mentioned, but also at the same time, or there's a part where we would go into what we call the documentation sprint. So basically, the manufacturer needs to have a comprehensive risk analysis there, some described batch policies, have stuff for bill of materials, for example, or vulnerability disclosure processes. So this isn't just paperwork, it's the sort of evidence trail that proves the compliance. So it has to go along with what Weltas mentioned, like how you design, how you actually build the features goes along with the documentation, but it's a more important step as well, right, to do.
Right. But what really determines whether, for example, you can do self-declaration or you actually need a notified body? We talked about the sketch in the beginning, and so what does that as well mean for people?
Yeah, so let's say when the harmonized standards actually got out, typically if you are completely compliant with the harmonized standard, fully compliant with all the requirements, you can actually trigger what we call the self-assessment against that harmonized standard, and then do the declaration of conformity. But if your product triggers any of the specific restriction, and here's basically the catch that I mentioned, like having a default password or certain network vulnerabilities, that has to be taken into account. So that's where you typically need the third-party assessment. But also, I think from the what we are seeing today is that it all depends on the level of maturity as well of the manufacturers. They usually prefer to rely on a third-party assessment, but in that case, they have really to choose the right one that is, has expertise in the specific areas with regards to cybersecurity and the EN 18031.
I think that's quite a good information as well for people to see specifically how to connect as well with notified bodies to help them go through the whole process. But like, if you want to talk about some kind of a final phase or a final thing that they need to do, maybe, I don't know, Weltas, if you could help us with this to figure out what could be a final thing that manufacturers can do in preparation within this 90-day sprint that we are talking about.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this final phase, basically, you are almost done to be market ready. And usually what you have to do is perform some final penetration testing, for instance. You need to issue your declaration of conformity to set up the necessary QR codes or the URL, which are necessary for documentation access. And then you need to establish your post-market launch surveillance process after the product launch.
Right. Well, all of this really sounds, like intensive. I know that we've put it in 3 minutes of conversation. It's definitely intensive. However, it is doable. A big question, maybe Roland, to you would be like, okay, what's really the success rate for the manufacturers who actually commit to this kind of timeline? And we're talking about a 90-day sprint to actually get conformant and rescue themselves before things happen.
Yeah, well, it's really difficult to answer your question, but I mean that definitely probably by the end of the year we have much more, let's say, more details on the statistics. But if they are really realistic about the scope and have the technical resources, most can achieve basic compliance within the 3 months, right, work of activities. So the key is not trying to boil the ocean. Focus on the core product first, on a risk-based approach, and with regards to what is more sensitive, what is more risky, and how actually that could impact your business and your customers' business potentially, and then actually take the accurate steps and action that we recommended earlier.
Right. Well, thanks for this. And so this covers the initial 90 days we're talking about, and we know that the RED Directive is hitting tonight at midnight, and people are already suffering. But we know that there are even more things coming into the horizon. So with this other regulation coming into the horizon, the Cyber Resilience Act, or CRA, or CRA, however you want to pronounce it, how does today's RED Directive work in connection with the CRA and what's coming up next?
Yeah, that great questions. So yeah, the Cyber Resilience Act, just to give you, more reminder, it entered already in force back in December 2024, but it course obligation don't kick in until the December 11th, 2027. Okay, so the beautiful thing is that, well, I would say it currently, we expect that actually everything that you're doing, most of what you're doing actually for the radio equipment compliance with regards to cybersecurity will directly feed in the CRA. But you have to understand, and that's actually already acted as well, that indeed the radio equipment directive will be replaced by the CRA by December 2027. And there will be like always a delta, which is mostly, even though on the technical side you are compliant with the CRA, it's still administrative, and you have to cope with that.
Okay, so that's some good news. So it's not just about meeting today's deadline, but we're really talking about being future-proof, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the CRA cover much broader range. Okay, so we're talking products with digital elements, or also that could have like communicate with software with the remote processing of data, but the fundamental security principle, what we call the essential requirements, are aligned. Of course, there are a little bit more, specifically about the life cycle development, for example, vulnerability management, incident response. So get these right actually with the radio equipment directive requirements of the EN 18031, and you're already most of the way to CRA compliance.
I think that's good. And Gueltas, if I want to talk from a product development perspective, how should manufacturers really be thinking about this type of alignment, knowing that the CRA is there?
Yeah, good question, Ali. Well, I mean, when you build once, then you need to comply twice. I mean, basically the security architectures you are implementing as an OEM or manufacturer for RED or security, I mean, like hardware root of trust, secure updates, mechanisms, all the cryptographic protection you implement, this become the foundation for the CRA compliance. So basically, it's much more efficient than treating them as a separate project.
Okay, so if we want to, let's say, wrap up with some key takeaways from this. So first, the day one reality, RED Cybersecurity rules are live as of tonight midnight. They will be live, and enforcement has real teeth, as we said. So we're seeing substantial fines, shipment detentions, market access issues, just like we spoke throughout. Secondly, like, there's still hope. There is this path forward, right? We've presented them to you today, like a 3-month rescue roadmap, like scoping the gaps, implementing those different hard controls, sprinting through all the documentations that are needed, choosing the conformity path, and really start getting market ready. And thirdly, we're talking about like this work really sets up for the Cyber Resilience Act requirements that are coming into effect in 2027. So for you, our viewers, we've really prepared a nice detailed RED compliance checklist that breaks down each of these steps with specific actions and timelines to help you through it. And then you will find, you will be provided with a download link after you watch this, or you might find it somewhere hidden in the description of the video. And to be able to finalize, I want to ask Roland, Gueltas, first, thank you, of course, for this practical guidance. And I want to open it up for you guys for any final thoughts to share. Maybe Roland, you could go first, and then Gueltas, and then I will be closing our conversation for today. Please, Roland.
Yeah, I'd like really to thank you, Ali, for this opportunity, because it's really crucial for every single manufacturer that is actually concerned today and would like really to learn more. What I would really recommend is that they don't wait actually to to get actually the action happening, especially, for example, for the CRA. People will wait, for example, for the harmonized standards to be ready, but I would say don't wait. Start with whatever actually is stable. Be well surrounded by experts. Okay, don't go work with people that are discovering at the same level of you the standards or the cybersecurity requirements. Be also equipped. Okay, so there are tools which could help you, like for example, CyberPass platform could actually streamline these processes, helping with AI actually getting you ready faster. So that's really important. So every day of delay makes the catch up harder and more expensive. So act now. That's my recommendation.
Thank you, for Roland, for this, and definitely that's quite a gem. Gueltas, any final words and thoughts on your end?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as an OEM or device manufacturer, I mean, you don't feel alone. I mean, you have companies which have the right expertise, like RED Labs, like SEALSQ, who can help you, support you in your journey, because I think it's really a journey. And remember, I mean, security is not only about compliance. It's more about building trust with your customers, protecting your brand, protecting your equity, and at the end, I mean, making your customer happy.
Well, thank you very much, Roland. Thank you very much, Gueltas, for joining in. And just to actually say final words on this, really take those actions as Gueltas and Roland were sharing with us. We're really providing this information to you for that benefit of the whole ecosystem from a cybersecurity perspective. We've prepared a checklist for you. Download it, use it. Don't just download it and archive it on the side. It's something for your benefit. And as mentioned by Gueltas and by Roland, we are here to support. We are here to help. And so please feel free to reach out to us, and we will be more than wanting to be able to have a conversation with you and have a nice consultation with you. Thank you for tuning in, and see you in the next episode. Take good care of yourself. Bye-bye.